All right, well, thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today at the MVLRI Research Webinar Series. We took a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back and we're really excited to have Stacy Schuh and Anne-Marie Mapes from, Stacy's from Michigan Virtual and Anne-Marie's from the Michigan Department of Education talking to you today. A couple quick things before we do that. This is, again, part of the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute webinar series, and Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute is part of Michigan Virtual. The goal of MVLRI is to expand Michigan's capacity to support new learning models, engage research to inform new policies in online and blended learning, and strengthen Michigan's infrastructure for sharing best practices to ensure student success. Another quick thing that I have to read before we get started is just a little disclaimer. This webinar is being recorded and shared publicly, and consequently, anything shared during this webinar, including chat comments, could be shared publicly. This webinar may represent a presenter or attendee's personal views, opinions, conclusions, and other information which do not necessarily reflect those of Michigan Virtual and the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute and are not given nor endorsed by MVLRI unless otherwise specified. All right, so with all that fun stuff taken care of, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy and Anne-Marie. They can introduce themselves and go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. So I'll let Anne-Marie start talking a little bit about herself.
Good afternoon. My name is Anne-Marie Mapes, and I am an education technology consultant with the Michigan Department of Education in the Office of Systems Evaluation and Technology. And I have been working on the Michigan Integrated Technology Competencies for Students and the development of those, along with Stacy.
And I'm Stacy Schuh. I work here at Michigan Virtual as a professional learning services manager. And my background is in elementary education and instructional technology. So I'm very excited about today's topic. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm just gonna share my screen here. And you'll notice on the slide deck, as we get to the front, there is a link to today's slide deck. So if you're interested in following along, it is down there at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side with the bit.ly link. So feel free to join us today. So to start, we just wanted to kind of go through some of our outcomes. And one of the things we really want to focus in on today is understanding the MITECS and the development of these technology standards for students and the content, and then also to have you engage and explore in some of the items found on the website, the resources, and just learn a little bit more about this effort.
So as we think about technology competencies and just kind of set the stage for our conversation today and sharing this with you, when you think about your child or a child that you know, a child that you love, maybe a niece, a nephew, a grandson, or your own child yourself, what competencies do you want your child to acquire in school? And I think as we think about what we want our children to know and do, I just recently had a son, and he's going to be class of 2036. And so thinking about what I want to do and what I currently do in my work is going to look much different for him in his future. So we need to kind of have that mindset when we think about the technology skills of the future.
So when we took a look at the integrated technology competencies for students, we really looked at a lot of what we wanted technology to bring to students. We didn't want to actually have technology standards that tied to tools, but rather what students could do with those tools. Could they innovate in design? Could they be global collaborators, creative communicators, digital citizens, computational thinkers, constructors of knowledge? And then how could we empower students using technology? So we really wanted to consider not necessarily what tool we're using, but what we want students to be able to do with that tool. And that's reflected in these competencies that were ISTE standards that are modeled after the ISTE standards.
So we convened a group back in June of last year, so that would be June of 2017, to look at revising the Michigan Educational Technology Standards for Students, the MITECS. Those were last worked on in 2009, and they're actually older than that because they're based on the ISTE student standards from, I believe it's 2007. So much needed revision there. So we considered as a group several different options, including revising the existing METs or the formerly existing METs, creating new standards, so starting from scratch, or adapting standards from other relevant resources. And so we took the good work that has been done by the International Society for Technology and Education, ISTE, and we have then adopted the 2016 International Society for Technology and Education Standards for Students, so the ISTE Standards for Students. We've adopted those with Michigan branding. We've made no changes to the content. So it's really changing them from standards to competencies because of our new approach in Michigan. And then that branding. So you'll see in all the documents that we're going to share with you today that it no longer says ISTE on it. We have received permissions to rebrand those with Michigan context.
So thinking about the need for change from the 2007, did you say, ISTE standards that we had originally had in place? One of the things that we really wanted to focus on is how there have been shifts that are impacting our lives and affecting our students. And simply just using or knowing how to use a tool isn't something that we're really focused on anymore. We really want them to apply it. And because the 2009 METs focused on technology tools and basic technology skills, we felt that they needed to be updated. Proficiency in foundational technology skills is necessary, but it's really important to remember that it's not the end-all be-all. We want them to take this technology and actually utilize it to share and learn and collaborate and get actually more than 21st century skills. So we're really focusing now on how to harness technology where it's appropriate and not just shoving technology in for technology's sake, but really using it to just better equip our students and enhance teaching and learning.
So you can see here the progression of the technology standards at both the national and state level. So in 1998, it was really focusing on those technology tools, and that's when the standards were first emerging. And then it was still kind of focused on those tools in 2007, but we were starting to focus a little bit more on learning and creativity and innovation. And now with the standards in 2016, they're focused really on learning and doing, as Stacy said, not on technology. I like to mention here also ESSA Title IV, Part A, because that includes the effective use of technology. When really we talk about the effective use of technology, as Stacy said, it enhances teaching and learning. It can really amplify what we're doing in the classroom.
I'm going to let Anne-Marie take on this one because she can speak a little bit probably more to the 10 and 10 strategic plan than I can. So
the top 10 and 10 strategic plan is the Michigan Department of Education's approach to becoming a top 10 and 10 state in 10 years. And so of that 10 and 10 plan, they've distilled 7 goals down into 4 focus areas. So we believe that the MITECS address 2 components of learner-centered supports in terms of the personalized learning approach and deeper learning that can be afforded through the use of the MITECS. Also, we know that this touches on effective educational workforce because we require professional learning and development in order to see the MITECS in action in the classroom, as well as implementation that's supported through strategic partnerships like our partnership with Michigan Virtual. And all of this cannot be possible without a robust technology infrastructure in place. So not only does that mean that we need devices in the hands of students and robust broadband and connectivity in the classroom and at home, but also that students can access this anywhere, everywhere, and that we have resources, perhaps openly licensed educational resources or OER, that can support the MITECS in action.
I liked how you slipped OER in there. That's another great initiative that we'll have to talk about at some point. So Let's talk a little bit about the standards. And the academic standards outline learning expectations for Michigan students, and they're intended to guide local curriculum development, but these serve as a framework for curriculum, with the curriculum prescribing instructional resources, methods, progressions, and additional knowledge valued by the local community. But really, this is a framework, and using your curriculum and applying this as kind of a wraparound to it, and provide a basis for state assessments, which measure how well schools are providing opportunities for all students to learn and to learn the content outlined by the standards.
So we want to keep this slide in here because it's important to focus in on why we've changed from standards to competencies. In the next slide, we address competencies and our proposed definition for competency.
So this word cloud kind of encapsulates what we really want students to be able to do based on those competencies. And we want to create innovative designers and curious researchers, and really importantly, digital citizens, kids that will someday be adults that will be able to use technology in a way that's responsible and constructive.
So this is the Michigan Department of Education's working definition currently of competencies, and we're waiting to hear what INACOL has in terms of their developing competency definition right now as well. But these are explicit, measurable, transferable learning objectives, which include application and creation of knowledge. They may be demonstrated in a variety of learning environments and with a variety of measures of learning. So in working on their committee and addressing the need for the refresh of the METS, we together as a group said, we think that these are not standards, these are not technology standards, that these are technology competencies because they support learning across the content areas. Now, that's completely different in terms of what might be for computer science. Computer science, we're working right now and starting the development of standards there.
So why competencies? And I think that Anne-Marie touched on that quite a bit, but we're moving from compliance-driven to transformational learning. And technology is not a discipline, subject, or content area, but it's supporting integrated cross-curricular approaches to learning. We also feel that we're taking these competencies, and as Anne-Marie said, it goes across the content areas, and it's supporting mastering standards in all areas. So from science to language arts, and it includes or assumes technical skills and integrates activities requiring technology.
So if you take a look at many of our standards currently, the math or ELA standards, many of these already include or assume technical skill. And so this is not, as Stacy just mentioned, this is not something separate. This is already included in many of our standards. And then this also just supports the critical thinking embedded in our academic standards in terms of collaboration and communication, again. It also supports the rigor and depth in math and science in our state standards. So in terms of computational thinking and innovative design.
So one of the things that we did as a team when we looked at these competencies is we took a survey of our stakeholders, and we found that 81% across all sectors said that the competencies reflect high or very high alignment with the skills needed in employees or coworkers. And you can kind of see along the right-hand side there where we took those opinions from in terms of, we've got a lot of different cross sections here, including agriculture all the way down to marketing to manufacturing.
So some themes of the MITECS are that they are learner-centered, and that just aligns very well with our top 10 and 10 and learner-centered supports. You'll see students as responsible, self-directed learners. And then, as we've mentioned many times before, these all support academic standards.
At their core, the ISTE standards, or the MITECS, are about pedagogy and not just tools. And we really, I think this is something we really want to hit home. We really want to emphasize the way that technology can be used to amplify and even transform learning and teaching, and redefining learning and in a technology-driven world to a report to support adoption of the ISTE standards for students. And this is from that June 2016 publication. But again, it's really about using technology to engage students and share out what they know.
So I really like this slide. It's not your parents' tech skills. And it's really not when you think about it, because I think when I think about what we do in our current jobs, I know that I need to hone my skills in terms of sometimes, some of these areas like digital citizenship, like curator or knowledge constructor. Am I certain that the resources that I'm sharing and the stories that I'm sharing on Facebook, or the content that I'm sharing on Facebook, is it a relevant source? And is it a source that I can trust? So I think we all know people who could benefit from honing their technology skills and going through the MITECS as well, not just students.
That is very true.
So this is an infographic that one of our staff at the department developed. And as you see, going from right to left, you go through all the MITECS from Empowered Learner back. Empowered Learner is really the focus of the MITECS. And when we were creating this infographic, we got a lot of input on it, because we said we want to show that the content areas are at the center of this, so that they're being supported by these competencies, and also that these images that we have in the globe around here, those could translate to any one of these competencies. They're not specific to any one competency as well.
And as a former classroom teacher, I feel like that's a really good way to look at it, because at times in the past when I have used technology, it was, okay, teach this content and then teach technology. And now it feels like it makes more sense in supporting both areas together. So the definition of an empowered learner, as Anne-Marie said, is just students leveraging technology to demonstrate competency, and students articulate or reflect on learning goals. Using this type of technology, students can build networks, they can customize learning environments, and really personalize learning for themselves, using technology to seek feedback that transforms or informs their learning, and then understanding fundamental technology operations and transfer knowledge to explore emerging technologies. So not just knowing how something works, but how to really think about how to solve a problem and how technology can help, but not necessarily just knowing what buttons to push.
So knowledge constructor. So curate a variety of resources to construct knowledge and produce artifacts to make meaningful learning experiences for themselves and others. And then in doing that, employing effective research strategies to retrieve information, evaluate credibility, accuracy, and relevance, and then build knowledge by actively exploring and developing solutions for real world problems. So how can I go out there and access this information age where anything is at our fingertips, and how do I braid together these resources? How am I curating my own content? How can I then share this back out and create new and construct new artifacts to share my knowledge?
So when we think about computational thinkers, we really want to develop and employ strategies for understanding and solving problems in ways that leverage the power of technology to develop and test solutions. So formulate problem definitions suited for technology-assisted methods, collect data or identify relevant data sets, use digital tools to analyze them and represent the data, break problems into component parts, extract key information, create and test automated solutions. So again, using that technology to really think about how to solve a problem or how to identify if there is a problem or a need to solve a problem.
Digital citizen, so that is recognizing the rights and responsibilities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected world. And I think it's really important here to understand that it's also about cultivating your personality both online and offline and understanding the difference between the two. And also that students are aware of the permanence of their actions, engage in that positive legal and safe and ethical behavior, demonstrate understanding and respect for the obligations and using and sharing intellectual property. So back to when we mentioned OER before, understanding what it means to use an openly licensed resource or to even use licensing on your resource and to not just pull down a picture from a website and use that in your work. And then managing personal data securely to protect identity and understand how personal data is collected and tracked. And this is something that's really important. I know that we have many concerns about data privacy and student data privacy, and especially with the Facebook breach earlier this year. How are we understanding how our data are being used and how are we using data in our work?
So that brings us to creative communicators. And students communicate clearly and express themselves creatively for a variety of purposes using platforms, tools, styles, formats, and digital media appropriate to goals. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about being a digital citizen as well. And think about how you're using that technology to communicate with others and what it means to really be respectful online, but also just protecting yourselves and others. So when we look at this particular area, we really want to have students be able to remix and recreate new work, use visualizations, models, etc. to communicate, and then publish or present content customized to the audience. So again, using technology to really reach others.
So innovative designer, and this is our second to final competency. So use technologies within design processes to identify and solve problems by creating new imaginative solutions. Use design process to generate ideas, test theories, create innovative artifacts, or solve problems. Consider design constraints and calculate risks. Develop, test, and refine prototypes, and persevere through ambiguity and the challenges of open-ended problems. And so you'll see some of the ties to some of the work that my colleagues in the department have been doing in terms of the social and emotional competencies, because we see down here in innovative design that the idea of grit is here in terms of following through and persevering through ambiguity. But really this is almost a new approach, is how are we using design thinking to solve problems and test theories. And as you know, we've been talking about all these different competencies. Again, this supports learning across the content areas.
So finally, global collaborator. And this is utilizing technology to make connections with others globally, locally, to broaden perspectives and learning. And this one for me, as a classroom teacher in a rural area, would have been huge, because this allows my students to collaborate with others beyond the four walls of my classroom, and to really collaborate with others to tackle authentic problems, to connect with learners from other backgrounds and cultures, use collaborative technologies to connect with others and examine issues from multiple viewpoints, and contribute to project teams working towards a common goal. And that is not just within my classroom setting, but actually around the state and around the globe.
Yeah, so I think when we think about this, in the past, it's just been, oh, can we connect with a subject matter expert in, from somewhere across the world, or can we do a virtual classroom field trip and go to a museum across the country? But to Stacy's point, we have some examples where this is really working really well in schools around Michigan. We've been sharing some of these out at our Top 10 and 10 Innovation Roadshows from the Michigan Department of Ed with our strategic partners in the community. But really, how are we leveraging our partnerships and tackling those authentic problems? I know of some students up in the UP who are using GIS to share ways that they're working with their parks or other innovative solutions with water and things like that. But how are we really leveraging these technologies to work with our communities and also have that open conversation with them. Can we work with a community here in Michigan, then also partner with a local community across the world to talk to them about what they're doing back in their neck of the woods as well.
So we do have some examples of these competencies in action. And Anne-Marie, would you like to touch on some of those?
So like I mentioned just briefly a few minutes ago, the Lake Superior Stewardship Initiative. So that is an example of what they're doing, using technology, taking a look at the waters and trying to make a real impact in terms of being a global collaborator and having that local impact. So these are all some examples of what areas of the state are doing to address the competencies. And these examples were pulled from our committee. I know that you were familiar with the Tech Day.
Yes. So in the district that I worked with, one of the things that we had an opportunity to do is we had a teacher who really wanted to give students voice and choice over their learning. And so they essentially created a technology conference for their students, and the students got to pick where they went and what they learned. And it was a day of learning, not only for the students, but also for the educators to see how students who had voice and choice, how that looked and where it would take them. And it was very interesting because the first time that they did it, one of the things that came out of it is the need to do it across the entire school. They had started with a small group of third graders and then moved forward. But the kids loved it. They wanted to not only learn, but they also wanted to teach each other. And so what came out of that is moving forward, the kids actually took control of this tech day, and they were showcasing some of the things that they were doing and teaching each other, which I think is really powerful.
So we're still looking for more examples, and we'll be sharing with you what the current MITECS website looks like. And as we go into there, you'll see some scenarios that have been pulled down from ISTE. And we would like to build out some additional scenarios, but really connecting to the work that's being done in classrooms in support of learning in, for example, ELA or social studies or science.
And I would say too, if you have any suggestions out there for those classrooms around the state or someone that you know is doing this, we do have our information at the end of the slide deck, and please let us know. So I did want to pop on over to the website. So if you are looking for more resources, if you visit techplan.org/MITECS, and again, this is in your presentation link, but this will bring you to the MITECS website. And on the front here, you'll notice that we do have the competency icon listed here at their positioned here at the top. But then as you scroll down the page, you're going to find a lot of different resources. And one of the things I really wanted to point out is this toolkit to support district level implementation, because a lot of the times we hear, okay, how do we implement this in our districts? Where do we start? And so, Anne-Marie, can you talk a little bit about how you might use these resources in your district?
Certainly. So we have the one pager there. So it's a one page front and back of the competencies, and these are the competencies at the high school level, and that's what we are referring to every time we refer to the MITECS. But second on the list is this Google slide deck. So that is a slide deck that basically it's the one that we're using today. You can pull that down or make a copy and then repurpose that for your district in any way possible, whatever edits you want to make. Below that is an additional presentation that we did at McCall, and then the age band articulation. So I just mentioned that the one pager there is the one front page and back page. That is for high school age students. We also have the age band articulation that are the competencies for those lower grade bands. And that's what Stacy has open now.
And before we came on today, I was talking a little bit with Anne-Marie about being a former elementary teacher. I would love to see what I should be doing in order to support my students when they do get to high school. So I really like these these articulation pages just because it gives me a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll pop back out here.
And then we also have the scenarios document that I just mentioned. So if you want to go in there. So some of the stories that we had shared on the few slides previous, those are a little bit less in detail than some of these scenarios here. So the scenarios have been developed through ISTE. So for example, if you go down to, if you see here, it says scenarios for ages 4 to 7, programming with robots. And then if you scroll down further on the next page, it lists the standards, the ISTE standards or the MITECS that this aligns to. So we would like to build out our own Michigan-based scenarios that could bring in some of the OER and tie into some of those relevant resources that have been developed in our state, and also align back to some of our content standards. So programming with robots, let's also talk about what standards in terms of math and science and technology that is touching on. So is it touching on computer science standards? Is it aligned to any of our math standards? So let's ensure that all of our scenarios are aligned not only to the MITECS, but also to support that approach that's integrated across the content areas. And then lastly, we have here the technology scope and sequence, and all of these 3 documents are all repurposed from ISTE, but with that rebranding as MITECS. So this is the technology scope and sequence that was developed by Shorecrest Academy in Florida. And as you'll see, if you look through there, it talks about, for example, basic operations and concepts. So beginning, developing, and secure. So are those competencies just beginning, and in what grade do you want to introduce those competencies? We did not want to put this at the like one of the first items in our toolkit, because we understand there is need for this in the classroom, and many educators will still need to reference this, but we did not want this to be the focus. Again, going back to the beginning when Stacy was talking about technology tools, we know that those are a means, but they're not the end. So our focus is really on collaboration and communication. We know that we need to utilize computers to do this and understand how computers need to be updated and understand the key components of a computer, but that's not the focus of our MITECS. And so this is out there as a resource. We understand that many educators will still need to use this, and we understand that it has value as a reference. We just don't want to focus on this. This is not the focus of our work.
And then if we scroll down on that main website page here on the front, on the home page, you'll notice there's also some resources here, and there are links to 21 things for students, 21 things for kids. If you're somebody who has not checked these resources out, I would say definitely go in here. This is a great program. It's brought to you by the REMC organization, the Regional Educational Media Center. Thank you. Media centers in Michigan. Woo! It's Wednesday.
It's been a long week already.
So if we were to click on, and I want to just click on the 21 things for students here at the top, this is a great resource because, as you can see, it sections everything out into different areas for learning. And so one of the things that we did talk about was collaboration. So if we click on collaboration here, it gives us all different kinds of resources, including a lesson plan and an introduction to actually having students collaborate using Google Docs. And this is on the 21 Things for Students site. There's also teacher resources here and assessments. And as you can see, it is not the only resource from 21 Things. There's also a 612. There's 21 Things for Teachers, which if you are a teacher and you're looking to learn more about different technology tools, you can go in here and explore. And also 21 Things for Administrators. Now, I am going to let Anne-Marie talk about the Google Applied Digital Skills. I myself looked at this last night and got pretty geeked about it. So
So this is something that I just found out about earlier this week, and these are resources available, curriculum resources available through Google. And just like 21 Things, which is ISTE aligned, they have the ISTE seal of alignment. Google's Applied Digital Skills also has the ISTE seal of alignment, so aligned to the MITECS then. So if we go up under curriculum, we can see that they have a number of activities that that align to the MITECS. For example, technology, ethics, and security. So these are resources and curriculum that are available for middle, high school, and also continuing education. So as you can see over here on the left, the time to complete is 3 to 4 hours, and the skills covered are communication. And so this shows, and I need to dig deeper into this also, because I'm wondering if it is technology agnostic or if they focus more on Google's tools and Google's suites. But you can go through here and sign in, and I was having a conversation with them earlier today to ask about what about the integrations with Google Classroom as well as other LMSs. So that information will all be forthcoming. But if we go back up to curriculum, you can filter by audience. So I filter by middle and high school. And then over here on the right, you can also then go to the drop-down menu and select state standard. So if I select Michigan, I can then also select grade level. So as you see, it's 7th through 12th. And then the standards. So it has the Michigan, it has the METs in here, and they will be updating for the MITECS to be included in here. And I think they're anticipating that this information will all be updated and aligned to Michigan standards sometime this summer. But if you go in here, if then adventure stories, you see that it covers visual collaboration, and it shows you. So not only does it show you the MITECS, but it also shows you on that kind of shortcrest document, the scope and sequence, what technology skills that support technology competencies would be here. So presentation, formatting, and slide hyperlinks. So I would like to invite Google to do a more in-depth presentation on their resources and see what they would like to do here in Michigan to offer some professional learning opportunities for the resources. But I think this is a great find, and I'd really like to incorporate it into our toolkit. So that's why it's listed on the page. And then, am I on the right screen now, or did I go off?
No
Sorry.
worries.
That's what happens when you...
Nope, you are good, I believe.
Okay. So if we scroll down here to the bottom, the final 2 items that are listed on here are administrator one-page overview and an educator one-page overview. So those are also some kind of letter that can help orient you and your staff to the MITECS, and kind of an introduction as to why the need was to update the METs. One of the things that we haven't really touched on yet is the assessment for these. And so with the phase out of the Enhancing Education Through Technology grant, with the phase out of the Education Through Technology grant, Enhancing Education Through Technology grant, we no longer have to complete that 8th grade digital literacy assessment. I think there is still a little bit of fuzziness around there, because some people still are thinking that that's available and that that's necessary. Oh, we're sharing the wrong screen. Sorry about that. I think we're probably down there. That's it, the next one. That's what they can still see that one. So we need to pop back over here to MITECS. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Yes, that never happens to anyone in their own classroom either.
So when we were working on the development of the competencies or the adoption of the competencies, we did not select an assessment. And so right now we're working on aligning the competencies in the MITECS to the core content standards. What we want to do is find a way that we don't have to assess these in addition to ways that you're already assessing students. So are there ways in which we can show competency in the MITECS that aren't going to be an additional burden on teachers or on the state? And we're going to be working through these conversations when we talk about our computer science standards and how do we assess those as well. So all very relevant conversations, but at this time, we don't have any assessment tied to the MITECS.
All right. So we're just going to pop back over here, and I believe this was something that you had kind of discussed yesterday with me, that there were some items that are still under development.
Yeah, so like I just mentioned, the crosswalk between the MITECS and the Michigan Core Content Standards, so math, ELA, and science. We have a partnership with Advanced Learning Partnerships. So a relationship with Advanced Learning Partnerships that has allowed us the opportunity to leverage some of their time. And they will be working on the crosswalks, as well as one for social studies, but that is forthcoming. As you know, the social studies standards have not been updated yet. So we're waiting on that. And then also identifying MITECS champions. So we're working with the Regional Educational Media Centers of Michigan and the Regional Instructional Technology Specialists, RITS group, to identify those MITECS champions who are integrating technology into the classroom to amplify teaching and learning. So if you know anybody out there who is a MITEC champion, and they might be a champion of the MITECS already and not even know it, if somebody is just really innovatively and artfully weaving technology into teaching and learning so that it can amplify what students are doing and really enhance the way that they're learning, then they are a MITEC champion. And we want to know from them and hear from them and share what they're doing in the classroom. And so we'd like to identify who those individuals are, or what classrooms are doing this really well, or what schools are doing this really well, and then capture some videos of how this looks in the classroom. I mean, we'd also like to get those scenarios developed. We're also working with Advanced Learning Partnerships to develop some scenarios that tie the MITECS to the academic standards, and also create some lessons or some units of what that might look like. But capturing videos of how this looks in the classroom will really make that relevant and real for a lot of people who aren't familiar with doing this yet.
So just to kind of piggyback on what you said earlier about open educational resources, would you mind taking a second and just kind of speaking to that and how that might be useful for teachers who are thinking about using these competencies in the classroom? And
yeah. Certainly. So Stacy is also involved in one of our initiatives at the department, and it's not really a department initiative because it is so owned by all of our strategic partnerships and partners. So that's an initiative called Go Open. So it's a national movement to advance the use of openly licensed educational resources. So that is those resources that are not only free, but also openly licensed so that we can repurpose them in our classroom and not violate copyright. So like the My Open Book project that was developed through the Technology Readiness Infrastructure Grant, those resources are customizable and able to be updated anywhere, anytime, and then available for use. And so it really, we kind of can take some of those funds that we would traditionally use to purchase textbooks and repurpose those funds and put them more into supporting teachers for professional learning, for developing additional OER, for refining and revising OER. But one of the things that we're working on right now is a repository, or a microsite, if you will, that will house all of Michigan's homegrown content. So as I mentioned, the My Open Books project, the MESA units, those from Oakland schools, the MESA units for ELA and math, and many of the other things like the MyStar, and a lot of, I don't know if I'm sure I'm missing some, but one of those resources, or one of those groupings of resources that are going to be living on our Michigan microsite, are also the 21 Things for Students, so that you can pull down those resources and then modify them for your classroom use and remix them, repurpose them. So also on that call earlier with Google today, I said, how are these licensed? Because it would be great if we could pull them into our microsite and have educators be able to seamlessly then transfer those. So our microsite is going to have LTI integration with Schoology, Moodle, Canvas, I know I'm forgetting something, Blackboard, but have those seamless integrations so I can go in and pull a lesson or a unit into my class and modify it. So I think that was kind of like, oh, maybe we want to license them in some way because they're not currently openly licensed, even though they're in Google Drive, so you can like make a copy. Well, let's make it explicit for educators so that they can go in and know that they have the ability to revise these and remix them for their classrooms.
Well, and model that for students too.
Exactly. And so Stacy was saying model that for students. So going back to knowledge construction, that really speaks to how students can curate content and curate their own learning and resources for learning.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And now we're going to open it up with the 15 minutes we have left for any questions or feedback. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here. And
so Anne-Marie, thank you so much. There were no questions, and you answered both of my questions that came up. I think good. Yeah, so thank you again so much. I think we're all set for this one. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We have another webinar on May 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be on Michigan's K-12 Virtual Learning Effectiveness Report. And Joe Friedoff, Vice President of Michigan Virtual, will be giving that presentation. So we hope to see you there. And again, thank you to Stacy and to Anne-Marie and to everyone who joined us today, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.